I think, yes, 10 minutes. After this, you discuss.
Perfetto. Good morning, buongiorno, good morning everybody, good morning to you that are here, good morning to the public that's following our conference. We are broadcasting it in streaming. So thank you very much to our speakers. Thank you very much to Dolores Prades, who created this conference, whom we met last September, and she made this proposal to me, which I was very happy to welcome. Actually, she proposed me also another interesting initiative, but we decided to reserve it for the next edition. So stay tuned. And thank you very much, Patricia Aldana, for accepting to chair this round table, and of course thanks to all our speakers. Actually, the 2 years that we have been living all over the world, actually it was interesting because it really involved the whole world, so probably we all experienced the same feelings, although in different situations, made us understand and realize even better than in our usual life how many differences, how many different lives people are living, and how different approaches they may have with books according to the different difficult kind of lives they have. I'd like to underline, this is something that Dolores pushed me think, that also in the luckiest countries, differences between children in different areas came out so clearly when it comes to studying, to attending school from home. Many of them are excluded. In Italy, a lot of children were excluded from this. So I think that the positive thing of what we experienced is that we were given the opportunity of think more about things. And this conference is a result of a corner of this global thinking. And I'm grateful to the speakers because they're here representing so many different countries and to tell us about amazing reading projects they have been doing in their countries. And I welcome very much Zoe Gaeni. She is the winner of one of the EB Awards dedicated to reading promotion for her long experience in Iran, but also the other speakers will tell us about very interesting experiences. So thank you very much. I'm not lucky as you because I won't be able to attend and listen to the speakers, but we are recording it. So also for those who can't listen to us for different time, for example, across the world, it's also recorded and it will be made available at our website in a week. So thank you very much and have a nice conference. Bye.
Buenos días a todos. Voy a hablar español, despacito. Bueno, es un honor, una alegría enorme estar aquí después de estos años tan difíciles y poder abrazar a los amigos, poder estar juntos, poder mirarse. Yo creo que eso es un oxígeno y una posibilidad de poder continuar con un poco de entusiasmo a pesar de todas las dificultades que estamos viviendo. Quería agradecer las palabras de Elena y agradecer que hayan abierto en la Feria de Bologna un espacio tan importante para discutir estas cuestiones que normalmente no se discuten en una feria como esta. O sea, yo creo que Bologna Children Book Fair, abrir el programa para esta sensibilización y responsabilización de nuestros editores, autores, ilustradores, todos los que trabajamos con los libros para la infancia, y que podamos pensar, yo creo que la mayoría de los niños del mundo, que son los niños que no tienen acceso a los libros o que están viviendo una situación de crisis, yo creo que eso es un momento extremadamente significativo incluso para la feria. Yo creo que la feria abraza eso con mucha valentía en este momento. Entonces, bueno, sabemos, solo para, yo sé que todo el mundo va a hablar un poco de eso, Patsy va a colocar eso en discusión. Sabemos que desafortunadamente las guerras, los conflictos no son una novedad en la historia de la humanidad ni en el mundo contemporáneo, y sabemos también que los niños son los mayores afectados por eso, con los efectos psicológicos, los efectos emocionales. Y, en fin, cómo podemos trabajar en el sentido de crear generaciones que puedan resolver los problemas del mundo de una forma más pacífica, tolerante y, en fin. Entonces, la mesa, no voy a hablar mucho más porque Elena habló. La mesa tiene como objetivo realmente, el tema es intercambiar experiencias de personas muy importantes que trabajan con los niños en crisis a través de la lectura, a través de los libros. Entonces tenemos aquí, Patsy después se van a presentar, pero yo quería pasarle la palabra a Patsy Aldana, que para quien no sabe es la creadora y por más de 35 años fue la editora de Groundhood Book y ahora es publisher de Aldana Books, que hace parte del Greystone Kids y es la presidente del IBI Trust. Patsy, yo creo que es, bueno, toda mi admiración por su trabajo a lo largo de muchísimos años. Yo creo que ella es la responsable en IBI por poner el foco en la crisis y en los libros, y yo soy su alumna y su seguidora ahí con la mayor admiración. Entonces, Patsy, te paso la palabra y la mesa es tuya.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to speak in English. I could speak in Spanish, but I'll speak in English. When I'm Patsy Aldana. When this panel was proposed, the world was different. The war has come, which I think puts a whole new light once again on crisis and children in crisis in massive numbers, which is not to say that children have not been in crisis from wars caused by all different kinds of countries in the past since the Second World War. And as you know, IBI arose as a result of the Second World War, trying to build bridges, trying to avoid this happening. So the thing that I have learned the most from being involved with IBI is that the single most valuable thing for me about IBI has been that we learn from each other about how to do better the work that we do, which is, apart from all the other things IBI does, one of its most important initiatives for me is children in crisis. And over the years, we have really had such an enriching interchange, which has been interrupted by the pandemic, on how to work with children in crisis better, even if they're in very different circumstances, whether they're in Afghanistan, whether in the southern border of the United States, whether they're in Gaza. And now, of course, we have these massive numbers of children from Ukraine that are going to be refugees, or the children that are left behind, or the children in Russia who are going to pay the price for what this country is doing to the world. So we're going to each person is going to present their activity, and they're all outstanding in their work. And then we're going to try to share experiences and have a discussion of how best we can now be moving forward in this current situation. And we would love also your participation. Those of you, I'm sure many of you here have been doing this kind of work. So I would like to present the panel. Zohre Ghanei, who is a longtime activist in Iran, who's done some of the most outstanding work with children in terrible conditions in Iran, and who just as a result has won the Reading Promotion Prize from IBI, which is so well deserved. And I have to say, Canada nominated her, so we're very happy. Bel Santos from Brazil. She is a person who has done very, very interesting work with children in poverty and children in Brazil, and she will be talking about that. Maria Beatriz Medina from the Banco del Libro in Venezuela, and I have to say that it was in Venezuela that the first work was done with children in crisis with Carmen Diana Dearden, who was the previous president of IBI and publisher of Ecaré. That was the first time that we really intervened, that an IBI section really intervened with children in crisis, and that experience is what made IBI suddenly realize just giving the Hans Christian Andersen Award is not enough. You know, this is not going to satisfy the needs of the world's children. So they were very, very crucial in creating that. Next is Kathy Uwimame, who just recently arrived and who is a consultant from Rwanda, has worked all around Eastern Africa, and is going to talk about her experiences in that part of the world, working with publishers and other people on children in crisis. And finally, Alison Tweed, who comes from Book Aid and has also been working a lot in Africa and is going to talk about her experiences there. And then we will share our experiences. I say each one will talk for about 10 minutes, make a presentation, and then we will have a dialogue, I hope, with you as well as with each other. So, Zohre, would you like to begin, please? Can you pass the microphone? Oh, the PowerPoint clicker? You're going to stand there and... Okay. ¿Qué se hizo la cosita? No, él nos dijo que había una clicker.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Patsy, for your introduction. And also thank you, Bologna Book Fair, Elena, and other people who invited me to this wonderful book fair and this session. You know, across the world, about 1 billion children are multidimensionally poor, meaning they lack necessities as basic as nutrition and clean water. Some 100 million additional children have been plunged into multidimensional poverty due to COVID-19. Sometimes there is a sense of helplessness confronted with this great poverty and injustice and the violence that is imposed on children all over the world. When we consider unbelievable statistics on infant mortality, hunger, malnutrition, poverty, inadequate medical care, poor education, not in 18th or 19th century, but in the 21st century. And in addition to this enduring human suffering, war has cast its dark and terrible shadow over helpless children here and there. Afghanistan, Yemen, Gaza, and now Ukraine. Is there any rescue from this misery and injustice? As individuals, we cannot stop the wars and change the political landscape. But we can act as an umbrella to protect these children, to say they don't lose hope. This is a human responsibility for all of us who are in small groups in isolated islands armed with books against the crisis imposed on children. We could make these children's lives a little better. Reading promotion projects could be the most accessible and effective way to reduce and calm down the anger, anxiety, and stress of these children. Let's speak about our experience with Read With Me in Iran. We work in deprived areas. Most of the families in these areas are poor, and the families are unemployed. Many of them are involved in drug trafficking, and their children experience neglect, abuse, and violence. These children need more than access to books. They need to be read and to be shared, quality books. They need to speak about their stories and their lives. This is our motto: all children have the right to read quality books. They need to be able to construct a fantasy world. They need to be healed of their injuries through books. They need to be prepared to face big and serious problems like love, illness, and death. Based on this reality, the Institute developed the Read With Me project, aimed to make a meaningful change in the lives of deprived children through books and reading. About 15 years ago, we started this project for disadvantaged children who are generally at risk. We started it as a pilot project in a marginal area of southeast Tehran, close to brick kilns, where some 150 families, Afghan families, lived. Since the project has been successfully expanded to many rural and urban areas in Iran, as the project was designed to be implemented for different groups and different age groups and in different environments, even in some. These are also the children of brick kilns in marginal parts of Tehran. These children, some of them are Afghan, some of them are Iranian. Both Iranian and Afghans have immigrated to this place to work. Their families worked for earning money. And the children also work with their parents there. And Read With Me tried to go to this place, the volunteers, to read books for these children for a while, because they just moved from they are seasonal workers that they just move, but for a while, for example, 3 months in summer, we go there and read books for them. And also, there are some NGOs, centers that have been established for mothers, the mothers who run their families, because the fathers are addicted to drugs and cannot work. And here, as you see in the picture, it is a library that we established in this center for the children of those women. These families cannot send their children to preschools, and children come to this library. Not only we have sessions, reading aloud sessions with these children, also we try to improve literacy skills as emergent literacy skills for these children. And you know that we go to schools as well. This is a school in Sistan, Balochistan. We train the teachers, we train the librarians to read books for children and also to improve their literacy skills. Also, we work in nursery and orphanages because we believe that reading should be started from when the children are infants. We go there to just to read books for these children, and you know that for speaking with them, hugging them, and have some reading rhymes for these children, everything they need to be just to be grown. And also, Read With Me go to hospitals as well. This is a section for children who suffer from cancer. We go there and read books with them. Reading with babies and toddlers is a part of our project that I can speak further in the session. And also we just improved this project to reading with families. It is important that to read with families because we just give the books to families and also train the mothers, not only literate mothers, but also illiterate or semi-illiterate mothers, how to share the books, picture books, and encourage mothers to go to literacy classes. After COVID-19, this project was very successful because most of the schools and libraries were closed, and then the families could take the books from the libraries, our libraries, to their homes, and share the books with their children. Another work, we work with children in crisis. After earthquake and floods in Iran, we take the books to those regions we read the books for traumatized children and just help them to improve their social, emotional skills in this field. This is some photos after earthquake in Kermanshah, Kurdistan in Iran. You know that we have a kind of children that, because now we have some few minutes, I just mentioned that we focus on labor children and refugee children now. And labor children I will explain further, and refugee children from Afghanistan after recent wave of moving Afghan people from Afghanistan to Iran. Most of the Afghan families who have come to Iran are from low-income families, and some of them have no identity card because they are illegal immigrants, illegal refugees. And we try to work with some NGOs who prepare some classes, some teachers. They are not the part of educational ministry because they don't be let to go to schools because of have no ID card. And then we work with these NGOs to improve their literacy skills and read books. These are some photos of children with no ID card. Not only Afghan children, also in Sistan, Balochistan, there are many children have no ID card, and because their father are Afghan or from Pakistan, and then they couldn't get ID card. And because of this, they couldn't go to schools. And this is a very important job for us to do something for these children. Okay, then I think it is finished, my time. And then, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kore. Obviously, her experiences are very pertinent to the work that's going to be taking place now in the future, as well as has been of the millions of refugee children that are now living in horrible conditions around the world. Belle, can you go next, please? ¿Puedes pasar, Belle? Gracias. Each of these people could talk for 2 hours. That's the unfortunate reality here, rephrasing.
Buongiorno a tutti quanti. Grazie Elena, Patti e Dolores e tutte le colleghe che stanno qui per questa opportunità di compartilhare un po' di quello che viviamo in Brasile. Chiedo scusa alle traduttrici perché la lingua che posso comunicarmi è questo italiano imparato 27 anni fa e che non uso mai, però come non so parlare altra lingua, oltre il portoghese, andiamo così. Questa mesa, questa charla è molto speciale per noi dal Brasile, un paese che si abitua a vivere con la violenza. Raramente si dice che il Brasile è un paese in guerra permanente, ma è quello che viviamo. Come possiamo vivere in silenzio quando in ogni 27 minuti un giovane nero è ucciso di forma violenta e molte volte per la forza dello Stato? Questa è la situazione in Brasile. I bambini non sanno se i loro genitori, se i loro fratelli rientrano a casa. E che senso c'è parlare della letteratura in questo contesto? Generalmente si dice In una situazione così basta dare da mangiare. La letteratura diventa un lusso in questi casi e noi siamo quelli che appostano che la letteratura è la possibilità di costruire non solo il futuro, ma pure il presente. Tuttavia, quali sono le condizioni, che tipo di letteratura possiamo offrire a questi bambini che camminano fianco a fianco con la morte? Bambini che vanno a letto e si svegliano affamati, che contraggono malattie prevenibili, che perdono il sonno sentendo gli spari e sentendo le persone che urlano per la paura e il dolore. Bambini che si sentono minacciati hanno bisogno di letteratura. Perché? Il Brasile, come si sa, una volta si pensava che il Brasile era il paese soltanto delle feste, dopo si è imparato che era pure il paese che usciva di una dittatura per la democrazia. Quando si creava la fiera di Bologna, il Brasile entrava in un golpe di Stato militare. Il 1964 è stato un anno molto duro, che solo dopo 20 anni si comincia a costruire la democrazia e adesso viviamo un'altra volta la minaccia di questi diritti. In questo paese abbiamo vissuto questo processo di democratizzazione, abbiamo aumentato l'accesso della popolazione alla scuola, alla università, l'accesso alla speranza, abbiamo accresciuto il quadro giuridico di diritti, abbiamo pure un statuto dei bambini e gli adolescenti per garantire che siano una priorità assoluta e che siano lasciati sicuri di tutte le forme di violenza. Però siamo tornati appena adesso al mappa della fame. Durante la pandemia della Covid-19, molti bambini non hanno potuto neanche accompagnare la scuola perché vivono in quartieri dove non c'è l'internet e dove l'unico apparecchio di connessione dalla casa, il telefonino, stava con i più grandi cercando lavoro. Sono bambini che hanno vissuto quasi 3 anni lontani dalla scuola. E come hanno vissuto, adesso dobbiamo lottare perché rientrino a scuola, perché sembra che possiamo vivere senza ela. Então, in questo contesto, in questo Brasile, che ha pure una politica nazionale del libro e della lettura, ma che c'è un governo adesso che scrive, e qui io apro per la citazione, che lo sviluppo, e questo governo dice, che lo sviluppo intellettuale nella prima infanzia si fa con semplici tecniche utilizzate dai genitori all'interno della casa. Chiusi la citazione. Questo governo non sa neanche che c'è un sacco di gente vivendo per la strada. Ogni volta più gente sulla strada. E quando dice che è sufficiente offrire ai bambini delle semplici tecniche utilizzate per lo sviluppo intellettuale, sta chiaro che non ha frequentato mai una fiera come questa. Io ho imparato con gli illustratori, gli scrittori che hanno frequentato questa fiera, che è impossibile tecniche semplici para che i bambini continuino a sognare, para che i bambini possano desiderare parole nuove, immagini nuove. Então, non sono tecniche. E lì conto un poco il lavoro che faccio io, perché abbiamo poco tempo, che lavoro abbiamo fatto in Brasile in un quartiere molto povero che è stato considerato il peggiore luogo per vivere nella città di São Paulo, che fino al 2009 non aveva una biblioteca. In quella immagine abbiamo questa biblioteca che è stata costruita all'interno di un cimitero. Nel cimitero, nella casa del sepultatore, 5 minuti, veloci, con questo italiano qua, e andiamo. E questa è una biblioteca che ha occupato il luogo dei morti, perché era l'unico spazio disponibile in quel quartiere. E lì ci siamo messi con i giovani per parlare di vita e della letteratura. E non è che erano giovani che gli piacevano leggere, pure perché nella sua scuola è una di quelle 61% delle scuole in Brasile non hanno biblioteche e loro studiavano in una di queste scuole. Però con loro abbiamo cominciato a discutere come mai non sappiamo che esiste una fiera del libro per i ragazzi in Bologna? Come mai non conosciamo questo universo di parole che è stato organizzato con tanta poesia? Come mai questo appartiene all'umanità? Questo è nostro pure. E lì abbiamo cominciato, quelle sono una delle immagini di un incontro fatto con Dolores e altre persone che amano la letteratura. E con questi giovani abbiamo imparato, e io leggo qui un pezzo che ho scritto, su questi adolescenti che non sono lettori, però che conoscevano le parole ma inciampavano su queste parole nuove. Avevano difficoltà a vedere il senso e la bellezza in opere classiche. Pensavano che non erano in grado di capirli. Lontano dai loro mondi, non sognavano biblioteche, non immaginavano gli indirizzi e la differenza entre una biblioteca e una libreria o una fiera del libro. Si sono resi conto, tuttavia, che i loro colori, le loro razze e etnia li rendevano disuguali. Tutto era attrito per loro. Tutto rallentava il loro movimento, la loro velocità. Ma è da questi attriti che abbiamo iniziato il processo di trasformazione di adolescenti non lettori e con bassa alfabetizzazione o lettramento in giovani lettori. E sono con questi giovani che abbiamo creato, per esempio, queste strade adottate, che sono le strade adottate con giochi, con letteratura, para che la strada non sia più un luogo pericoloso per i bambini, ma che sia un luogo di incontro. Sto finendo. Che la strada possa essere un luogo per giocare, per stare insieme, un luogo anche per produrre delle alimentazioni di forma collettiva, per spaventare la fame. Che sia pure un spazio come qui, in cui si comincia a preparare nuove forme di alimentarsi, forme sane, forme dove si può mangiare insieme. Abbiamo creato pure un centro di eccellenza in prima infanzia. Non è che abbiamo già questo centro, ma siamo organizzati per dire se questo è stato considerato il lugar peggiore per vivere in Brasile, vogliamo che sia, nel futuro, il migliore lugar per nascere. E cominciamo a fare di quel posto una maternità letteraria, un luogo dove nascono il lettore. Perché abbiamo pensato, come può essere se i bambini nascono sapendo che hanno una famiglia letteraria che li aspetta? E di questa forma abbiamo creato questo libro qui, ho portato uno per ognuno di questa charla e ci stanno anche altri per chi vuole tenere, un libro scritto con le madri che non hanno letto letteratura, che non hanno frequentato le università né le scuole, ma in 26 laboratori di lettura e di fotografia hanno registrato i movimenti dei suoi bambini e hanno scritto della poesia, della letteratura, che può essere anche una forma di accogliere e di lasciare lontano tutto questo dolore, tutta questa paura di vivere. Grazie.
Kathy Uimana, could you please go next? Gracias. Después tú.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kathy Wimana. I'm from Rwanda, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you, Bologna Children's Book Fair team, for inviting me. It is really my pleasure to be here and to share my experiences working with children in my country, either Rwandans or refugee children from Burundi and DRC. Oh, yes, I have to speak louder. So I'm a consultant in children's book chain development. So I work with publishers, authors, and writers, but mostly I work with development organizations, professional organizations working in the book sector, but also libraries and community-based initiatives. So today I will share my experience with one community library that is located in one of the refugee camps in Rwanda. So with this community library, I conducted an assessment and its analysis for a development humanitarian organization that wanted, they built that community library and they wanted to know if it is really working for children in the camp. So this is a camp where that had around 54,000 refugees from Burundi at the time of the study. And they wanted to know if we want to know the book we gave them and the programs we built for the community libraries, if they are being effective in helping children in the camp being able to learn well and effectively for their age. So I will share my experience in relation to that study. As you know, when we talk about literacy in our countries, it's not only about learning, but also about the potential of economic development, cultural development, and personal development. And particular to this community library, so children that refugee camp usually go to school out of the camp, like in the Rwandan schools in the neighboring sectors. But then they come home in the camp, but then they don't have access to books. The only way they can read in the camp is to go to the community library. It's their sole source of reading and learning in the whole camp, and the camp is really big. So children under 6, they don't go to school out of the camp because they're too young, and unfortunately at the time of the study there wasn't any childhood development center for them. So the only way they could have access to any reading materials was to go to the community libraries. So when I did the study, we really looked at some elements, because a community library has different roles. It has a civic and community engagement role. It has an early childhood learning role, encouraging reading to the inhabitants of the camp, economic and workforce development role, education and lifelong learning role, arts and culture and creativity, and digital inclusion. So we were assessing each role and how it is helping people who visit the library, particularly children, in their context, and if they're happy with it. But you know, the reality of humanitarian intervention, sometimes the settings are really difficult. For example, when you talk about digital inclusion, and you have different programs that are willing to donate, for example, tablets, and because of COVID-19, that hit everyone badly. Now we're talking about digital learning, and people are like, remote classes, you use tablets, use whatever. But the community library doesn't have electricity. So how are we going to use tablets and the TV and whatever when people don't have access to electricity? So that was the barrier number one, according to the librarians working there and the visitors, also families and parents who use the library. So you can see that if you want to plan for digital reading activities or remote learning, etc., you have to think first about the basics. You need to get the infrastructures there, like electricity. Another finding that was interesting, we saw there, the library was indeed helpful, particularly for secondary school students. This is like high school students and university students who are in the camp. So sometimes they go to the school out of the camp, but they come back on the weekends to see their families. Most of them testified that without the community library, they will not be able to succeed at school. So the library is mostly used by learners and students who are passing like national examinations to pass to another level. And you can see there are many curriculum-based textbooks and materials for them to read. But coming now to small children, there was two findings that showed us the organization, but also donors, stakeholders working around the camp need to improve. The first one was, of course, offering of early childhood development services, which are not present in the camp. And we were proposing the NGOs working in the camp could have like an ECD corner in the community library where families like mothers and young children can come and visit and play and read books. But that can only be effective when the books are in a language they speak and understand. So most of the books in the community libraries, more than 90% of the book collection was in English, and the Burundian, they don't speak English. Unless they have like a university degree, they don't speak English really. So they were like, okay, we want to read, but we don't have books in our mother tongue, which is Kirundi. And even some of us who can speak French, we don't have these books here. And even books for young children, in any language, there was no collection of children's books. So they were saying we need books in a language we understand and speak and feel at ease. before we get to read books in other languages. Another interesting finding that we had was that more than 90% of the library users were male. Only boys and men of a certain age visit the library, which means mothers, girls are not using the library. And we asked why. They said, we are interested in coming to learn how to read and write in our language first before coming and use these books in other languages. One of the recommendations we gave one of the organizations working in the camp was that they need to have a special program for women and girls to come visit the library, because they're not using it at all, and they think like reading in foreign languages or whatever books, it's not for them. Sometimes there are other underlying causes that we need to address, but that was like some shocking finding, and that needed to be addressed. Last of all, I'm coming to the end of my presentation, is that, so when we finished this study, we recommended that before doing any other program at the center, the community libraries, you need to involve the communities around the library, particularly mothers who spend a lot of time with their young children, but also for them to have their own reading program, so that they can be role models for their young kids, for them to instill the love of reading in them. And also, this is something we advise everywhere I go, is to really take care when you are building a book collection for a community library. Please be mindful of their needs, what they want to read, what they like. Everyone has preferences, even refugees and rural people. And please be mindful of the language they want to see in the books, what they want to read and what they want to write. So thank you very much.
Now we'll hear from Maria Beatriz Medina from the Banco del Libro in Venezuela. Thank you very much, Kathy. Thank you. There's so much to do. Huh? We have such a big job ahead of us in this world.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Voy a hablar en español. Quizás voy a pasar algunas láminas rápidamente para ajustarme al tiempo. Y bueno, quiero agradecer al equipo de la Feria del Libro de Bologna, a Elena, a Dolores por esta oportunidad, y a Patsy, con quien me liga una experiencia personal muy importante. Y este intercambio creo que es fundamental porque nos permite intercambiar experiencias. Así que, bueno. Dice Michel Petit que no hay nada peor que estar privado de la palabra para poder expresar lo que estamos viviendo. Quería empezar con esa frase, que ya la pasé rápidamente, porque es importante la palabra como herramienta y la lectura como herramienta de vida. Aquí nos ha convocado un tema que es los niños al margen, y nosotros, ya lo han demostrado, venimos de países poblados de niños al margen. Hoy ese es un problema que se ha redimensionado porque las zonas de exclusión se han multiplicado en diferentes partes del mundo debido a problemas de varias clases. Y en los últimos tiempos, la pandemia y otra guerra a las puertas de Europa nos han puesto en una situación mucho más difícil. Banco del Libro tiene 62 años trabajando en áreas vulnerables. En 1999, ya Patsy Aldana ha hablado del proyecto Leer para Vivir que llevó adelante Carpendiana Dirden y que estaba basado en una línea de biblioterapia que hemos capitalizado y hemos trabajado en otros proyectos. Esta experiencia se ha transformado en un programa que llamamos Tendiendo Puentes con la Lectura, de la cual vamos a hablar. Tendiendo Puentes en la Lectura empezó con un proyecto piloto que se llamaba Cuentos entre Amigos en el 2002. Y se hizo en 3 zonas populares de Caracas, en un momento de gran conflicto social. 3 eran las acciones que hacíamos: un acompañamiento y un soporte al desarrollo lector, formación de mediadores en las comunidades y promover la paz, la convivencia y el reconocimiento de la diferencia a través de la lectura literaria. En ese momento había una crisis política fuerte, una confrontación social, y nosotros decíamos que era un deslave social como el que habíamos sufrido en el 1999 con el deslave de la zona costera venezolana. Trabajamos con las comunidades, con los niños y este es el esquema de los objetivos. Nosotros queríamos tener una influencia positiva en la relación de los niños de estas áreas populares a través de la lectura de una selección de títulos con los cuales nosotros habíamos trabajado. Se trataba de literatura infantil que nosotros habíamos seleccionado. Promover esa coexistencia, esa posibilidad de participación ciudadana en el desarrollo a base de la lectura de libros para niños y crear espacios no convencionales de lectura en esos espacios. Con esa misma línea de acción continuamos otros proyectos. Aquí tenemos Tendiendo Puentes y varios de los proyectos que llevamos a cabo: Palabras por y para la no violencia, de la lectura a la escritura. Estos son varios de los proyectos que nosotros hemos llevado a cabo. En los últimos 30 años, Venezuela ha vivido una experiencia que no había vivido antes, y el problema de la inmigración. Esta crisis, por supuesto, se ha redimensionado con la pandemia y en el mundo el confinamiento ha exacerbado el individualismo. Yo diría que el futuro era solo incertidumbre. Para los niños venezolanos afectados por ese problema, nosotros llevamos a cabo Cuentos de tú a tú y Tendiendo Puentes en la Frontera. Ahora voy a hablar de uno de esos proyectos de Tendiendo Puentes que se llama Palabras para la no violencia, que en el 2012 ganó el premio Hamdan UNESCO, y creo que en este momento, con esta exacerbación de la violencia, creo que me quiero detener aquí. Aquí, bueno, tenemos una imagen de violencia escolar y uno de los libros con los cuales trabajamos allí. Nosotros trabajamos en la escuela y en los espacios comunitarios de 3 zonas populares venezolanas, porque tanto la escuela como los espacios comunitarios constituyen el espejo en lo que se ve reflejada la realidad. Y también es un espacio para trabajar y para aprender el trabajo social, es decir, un aprendizaje de socialización. Y, por supuesto, eso permite que se refuercen las posibilidades de aprendizaje en ese sentido, siempre y cuando utilicemos la lectura literaria. En Venezuela, en ese entonces, la violencia era un problema en crecimiento. Aquí, ajá. logramos en esa oportunidad un aporte de la Embajada de Canadá y trabajamos con una selección de niños, una selección de libros que llevamos a cabo una lectura literaria. Creo que se quedó parado. Bueno, en todo caso, creo que la posibilidad de leer y la lectura literaria nos dio la posibilidad de abrir las puertas a un mundo más plural y de alguna manera propiciar la internalización del lenguaje, de la palabra. Esa palabra a la que tenemos que apelar para nombrar lo que nos pasa. Con nuestros proyectos nosotros hemos verificado que los libros constituyen puentes, que la palabra pronunciada, elaborada, escrita y registrada simbólicamente nos conecta y nos ayuda a elaborar las dificultades de la realidad que nos circunda. Eso lo hemos validado. Y obviamente con esta línea de acción hemos comprobado también que la lectura literaria es un camino para interactuar con la realidad y reinterpretarla. Leer es interrogar las palabras. De este proceso podemos imaginar o inventar nosotros mismos. La palabra y su simbólica representación en la literatura contienen todo. Yo he oído, aquí hay algunos de los libros que hemos trabajado, pero en este congreso, en esta feria del libro, se ha repetido mucho tender puentes. Yo creo que sí, que hay que tender puentes. Y Catherine Patterson dice que a veces no es suficiente tender puentes, sino que a veces uno tiene que tenderse como un puente. Ojalá que este tender puente salga del ámbito discursivo y podamos verdaderamente tender puentes con esa herramienta fundamental que es la literatura infantil y juvenil y la lectura literaria.
Gracias, María. Muchas gracias. Now we will hear from Alison Tweed, and then we will have a few minutes for dialogue with all of us, because it's so clear that there's so much experience here, and yet there's so much for us to do in the world still. So sometimes you feel despair, and sometimes you feel hope.
Can you just give me the first? So which one is this one? Good morning, everybody, and it's a great privilege to be here at the Bologna Children's Book Fair. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I'm learning so much. I'm also learning quite a lot of Spanish and Portuguese, neither of which I speak, but I feel that we all somehow speak the same language, the language of the power of books and the importance of reading. And when I wander around the fair here and I see the wealth of children's books, such beautiful creations, such thoughtful creations, and I think about all the school libraries I've seen in Africa, the classrooms, the community libraries, with not a single book, and that disparity of wealth and access to reading is something that is always in the forefront of my mind. So if we can find ways to share it out a bit, I think then we are doing our jobs here today. So I know time is short and we want to talk and not listen. Just very briefly, Book Aid International, we're a London-based charity. We're nearly 70 years old. We work with UK publishers, over 100 UK publishers, who support our work by donating to us brand new books, which they would probably otherwise pulp or remainder. And those books that they give us are selected by us to be appropriate for the partners that we work with. Everything we do is in partnership. Most of what we do is in Africa, although increasingly, for reasons I'll touch on, we're reaching out beyond Africa. And we believe that working in partnership is the best way to ensure that the right books get to the right places. We couldn't do any of the work we do without the wonderful partners that we support. And those partners are a whole range of library services, NGOs, prison services, and increasingly NGOs supporting displaced and conflict-affected populations. And I think it's very telling that in the 10 years I've been Chief Exec of Book Aid International, our work has moved radically from supporting mainstream library and community libraries to reaching out to displaced populations around the world. I think it's just a testament to the crisis that's affecting the whole world right now. Gone back. So our mission is to ensure equitable access to books. We believe that everybody has the right to access books and read, not just those who can afford to buy. And I've heard some really interesting initiatives here in the Spotlight on Africa section from publishers who are working on buy one, donate one models. I think that's a really interesting model. So it's not just about what Book Aid can do donating books. It's also about what publishers can do to reach out and ensure that more people can read the books that they publish. As I say, increasingly our work is emphasising working with refugee and displaced populations, but that's a very broad phrase, and it encompasses many different kinds of situations. As we know, East Africa has one of the largest refugee populations in the world. Uganda has the most refugees in the whole world. It's hosting over 1.3 million refugees at the moment. That number is growing all the time. Most of those refugees are from South Sudan, and over 60% of them are children. So over 750,000 child refugees in Uganda alone. Uganda actually has a very enlightened attitude to refugees and supports them, helps them to get an education, make a living. They're not confined in the same way that they are in many other countries. But these longer-term refugee situations are a very rich place to work and encourage children to read books and learn and enjoy, because projects in a more settled environment enable you to not only donate books, but also to work with local facilitators, to work, in the case of our project in Adjumani and Bidi camp, to work with refugee facilitators as well, people who are drawn from the refugee population and who understand what these children are going through. So this project that we have in Adjumani and Bidi, there are two camps, I'm sure you have heard of them, in northern Uganda. We're working with an amazing NGO called Transcultural Psychosocial Organisation. They've been established in the camp for many years, and they, like many other NGOs, are working in a situation where they're setting up child-friendly spaces. So these spaces in the camp where children can go, where they'll be safe, where they can play, where they can learn, and where they can read. Often they will be a tent, sometimes they'll be a permanent structure, but they're places where children feel safe, where they're not going to be bullied or abused, where they can find peace, and importantly, where they can read. So we've worked with TPO, as we call them, in 8 of these child-friendly spaces, providing books that we select from our stock in the UK in conjunction with the NGO. They tell us the kinds of books and the level of books that the children will want, and also buying books from local publishers, Ugandan publishers, in local languages as well. So making sure that there's a good range of books for the children to read. And then we've worked with TPO, training the facilitators in promoting reading to children, getting children reading through spelling bees, through read aloud, through competitions, through reading clubs, encouraging particularly the girls to come to the reading session and read. We're also, this project also reaches out to the local schools, not only actually to the refugee schools, but some of the host community schools as well, because as I'm sure many of you working in refugee projects will know, refugee populations put a huge burden on host communities, and that can create all kinds of additional issues, resentment and imbalances. So we're trying to create an integrated project where all children are included. So this project's been going on for a couple of years now, and we're seeing sort of not only the children improving their reading, but the parents getting interested in what's happening as well. Even if they're not literate themselves, they're supporting the children to read. The children are taking the books to where they're living, and we're seeing a general kind of uplift in enthusiasm to read. And we're doing a lot of projects like this. We're also working in Kakuma, with Windle International, we're working in Dadaab, we're working in Rhino Camp in Uganda, and the demand is just unending. We can't satisfy the demand for books in these refugee settings, which is sad, but that is kind of the situation. So these long-term projects, projects in longer-term camps, enable us to support year on year. So we will set up the project, but we will go back and monitor the outcomes. We'll donate more books. We'll do refresher training, and over time, hopefully, see some really positive results. Some of the more responsive work we're doing, I mean, we've been talking a lot about Ukraine at this whole conference, but we're also reaching out to, well, organizations are reaching out to us for books, actually. We've done quite a lot of work in the Greek transit camps, particularly on Lesvos, in Moria and Karatepe camps. And I visited a couple of years ago, well, just before the pandemic, and I mean, there are many things that shock and surprise. But what really surprised me was that so many of the sort of grassroots NGOs, and even some of the UN-funded NGOs who are working to help particularly the unaccompanied minors and younger children get some kind of education, have no resources. There may be budgets for trainers, there may be budgets for teachers, they may have created a space, but nobody thinks about books, the budget to buy books, and that's where organisations like Book Aid International can help. We're not delivering these projects, but we're supporting partners to deliver them. And just a few books can make such a difference, a couple of boxes, a couple of 100 books for a project, so that these NGOs can create a little library where children can come and access books and read. And we've heard reports of children of levels of aggression dropping, of children being calmer, all of the escape that books can provide, which my colleagues here have spoken so eloquently about this morning. A small collection of books can make a huge difference. And so I'm conscious of time, but my last plea would be for all the publishers in the room, you can all do something to help. You can all think about donation, about corporate social responsibility, buy one, donate one schemes. There's so much that can be done. And we've seen from the UK publishers that support us, so many have phoned us up and said, what are you doing about the crisis in Ukraine? How are you helping Ukrainian refugees? We've got lots of ideas. We haven't got time to share them this morning. But publishers, it's in your hands. Those books are in your warehouses. So please think about how you can support those who don't have the access to books that so many people in Europe do have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all the speakers. We see what a huge place there is left to be filled with. We all believe in reading. We all know that it saves lives. We have so much left to do to make sure everyone has that possibility. So I would like to ask you, the audience, if you have any questions. Si tienen preguntas, I'll start with you.
What's your relationship with publishers in Brazil and the relationship of your communitary library in São Paulo with publishers, since it's based in the richest city of the country?
Sì, ora sì. Disculpa, sperava la traduzione. Adesso... Ah, pode fazer do português também? Não, não c'è, então faccio italiano. Perfetto. Perfetto. Scusa, ci mettiamo aqui d'accordo. Sì, noi abbiamo creato una rete nazionale delle biblioteche comunitarie, perché se lavoriamo da soli, nei piccoli quartieri, la possibilità di arrivare dei libri, le opportunità di trovare gli scrittori, scrittrici, è minore perché sei meno conosciuto. Adesso siamo 118 biblioteche comunitarie in Brasile e abbiamo degli accordi con delle librerie, con degli scrittori per fare i libri circolare tra la gente. Então, siamo diventati una forza importante nel Brasile anche per aiutare a costruire la politica del libro e della lettura, considerando che non è soltanto, non è sufficiente avere dei libri. Il ruolo dei mediatori della lettura è essenziale. Risposto? Los editores pure. Adesso abbiamo qui il nostro primo libro. Il nostro primo libro, abbiamo cominciato a lavorare molto con la lettura e la scritta insieme, perché anche questo è importante. Cerchiamo delle parole che parlano conosco, ma c'è bisogno pure di fare le nostre parole circolare. Questo libro, nati per leggere, nel miglior posto per nascere, che è ispirato in un progetto qui dell'Italia, Nati per leggere, che sta qui nella fiera, e è già un passo importante in questo senso.
Grazie.
Grazie a lei.
Should I speak English or Spanish? I don't know what's better.
Whichever, I think, I don't know how many people are able to understand questions in Spanish. Yes?
Okay, I'll just do English. I'm a bookseller, but I'm just also passionate about children literature, so I've been working on it and doing reading promotion, but my question is related to a project in Venezuela. I've been asked by this organization that is just starting. It's called Yo Me Visto con un libro. And what it's trying to do is to link, get clothes for children in a specific community in Venezuela that is very vulnerable, to send the clothes there, but link it to literacy and reading promotion. And the way it's working, it's this group of persons in Venezuela who received weekly. It's all sent by WhatsApp. This person sends an email or a WhatsApp with the reading material that this group of children then have to work on every day. And then they also interact with people in the Netherlands who are trying to learn Spanish. So the mentors in Netherlands, we're trying to see if it's better if it's adults that are learning Spanish or actually children with children, but it's just like to support and encourage each other. But my main question or thing that I'm like stuck with is that right now the pilot program is based on reading material that she found online for free, but it really has no literary quality. It's just very like maniqueo, you would say in Spanish, like this is good, this is bad, you should read. So, like, they're also trying to find the funds to build the local libraries in the community. That's part of the program. But how would you ask publishers to, like, release? You cannot release PDFs because of the rights. You cannot, like, send copies of the books and then photocopy them. That's also forbidden. So how would you solve it?
Maria Beatriz didn't understand your question very well, but I think what she would say is that charity, this is not about charity. No. It's not about just giving you know, from a rich country to a poor country without knowing what you're doing, and especially when it comes to books, quality books. And the best way is, in the countries where there is an IBI section, is to connect. The Banco del Libro is one of the great IBI sections in the world. If somebody wants to really promote reading in Venezuela, they should go through the Banco del Libro. In Africa, there's other organizations. In Iran, in Brazil, there is other organizations. But just giving charity, if you want to give charity, give money to an organization that is an established and experienced place. But don't start giving just leftover books or whatever you can.
Yeah, that was my whole point. She was building this program, and I was like, this doesn't make any sense. I don't even want to support it in this way. So yeah,
Sí. Bueno, trabajamos con libros que nosotros seleccionamos, o sea, libros de calidad, libros fundamentales, y nosotros venimos trabajando como en todas las secciones de IBI, con libros que la investigación de la literatura infantil, esa es nuestra herramienta, y nosotros buscamos recursos para construir entornos lectores con una colección de libros que nosotros seleccionamos y con las cuales hemos trabajado y con las cuales además hemos hecho proyectos de respuestas lectoras. Tenemos ese feedback. No sé si eso responde lo que más o menos.
Are there any questions from our other panelists that you would like to address to others? Oh, is there someone else? Sorry.
Hello, my name is Rula. I come from Beirut, Lebanon. I know that everybody knows what happened to Beirut in 2020, the explosion. I'm a designer and a creative entrepreneur, but I was there, I witnessed the explosion, and it made me traumatized as well, because we lived our childhood in war. So I felt the need to give my personal experience to children. So I did an initiative called Book of Beirut. It's a collection. I gathered 128 children traumatized from the explosion, and they did their own drawing with their own voice. And it's like, if you see here, you see the collection of kids expressing their anger, their emotions through painting. And I kept their voice inside the book, because I told them that everybody now can hear your story through a book. And my question is that how I'm doing this just for awareness that even in richness is not in material, in money. Richness is in the intelligence. And like we nurture, I saw a lot of NGOs helping Lebanon in food and shelter, but very few worked on the artistic and psychosocial support program for children of Lebanon or Syria. So my thing is how we can raise this awareness in the Arab world, like what she was saying in Brazil, that they are in permanent war. In Lebanon as well, we live always in constant conflict, political conflict, after the explosion, so kids are really traumatized, and we don't have access to books. Kids they don't have access to books and to artistic expressions. So my question is like, how can I continue? Because I did this on a personal initiative, and I don't know how to continue, because I don't know to whom to address, because I'm not in this field. I recently started out of my own passion for my country and for my people. Thank you.
IBI Lebanon actually was founded by, initially, a long time ago, reading to children in people's basements during the first war, that when Lebanon was constantly being, and Beirut was constantly being bombed, by Julinda Abu Nasser. That's where the creation of IBI Lebanon came about. And IBI Lebanon they have an incredible project of rebuilding school libraries with the support of UNESCO.
Also, there is
Yes, there is an IBI in Lebanon, and unlike many sections, or most of us, they've actually managed to attract UNESCO money, which is fantastic, and they have rebuilt now, I think, 7 or 8 libraries, and in their midst school libraries, they are now rebuilding another 10 or 15 school libraries. And they're having high-quality books in these libraries, and the libraries are being properly created, and they're training the librarians, the school librarians. So get in touch with IBI Lebanon. They are fantastic. Shireen, Kredi, and you can find her at the IBI stand in the fair.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for the very insightful presentations. I have a general question about evaluation. Is there, in any case, are there formal ways of evaluating the impact? I mean, I think all of you have been doing this wonderful work for a decade or two at least. Are there formal ways of evaluating the impact of these efforts and the books and the initiatives as compared to other children who are not fortunate enough even to benefit from these projects? That's my question. It's a general, whoever would like to answer.
Thank you very much for your question. Yes, it's really important to evaluate impact where you can, and I think if you have a structured project where you can do some baselines before the project starts, and then make sure that you're monitoring the project as you go through, you'll do a midline evaluation maybe a year into the project and look at the same children and the change over that time, and then come back to them at the end of the first phase of the project. It depends on, I guess, what are the outcomes that you want to measure. Some of it, I mean, one of the challenges we have is that a lot of what we do is supporting reading for pleasure and reading fluency and reading to create more confident children, to address trauma and so on. And those are more difficult to measure. It's not always about have their school exam results improved, because I think if you're in the area of school libraries or encouraging extensive reading, you're not necessarily going to be able to measure that impact through improved exam results. So I think you just have to be, I mean, we try to be very clear at the beginning of a project of what are the outcomes that we want to see and measure, and a lot of those are qualitative, and we get a lot of indication of the impact of our programs through what the children say, through case studies, through hearing the children's voices. And that's kind of what stays with you. Some of the comments that children make about the difference the books have made to their lives, for me, that's worth 1,000 statistics, but we still have to have the statistics.
My question really wasn't not necessarily statistics. I mean, what you just said is anecdotal, that you can really feel that 2 or 3 or 4 years later, these children, they're on a different path than they would have been without these efforts.
Michel Petit, who's a French academic, has done a lot of studies on IBI projects in Latin America and their long-term impacts in the communities. And we try to build assessment into all of our projects, our Children in Crisis projects. In Iran, there's been a lot of assessment, school entry. There are many. So if you look on the ibi.org website and you look at the projects, you can find some of these assessments. You can find access to them. So yes, we try to always make sure what we're doing, we know that we're doing it well. We have very few seconds left. ¿Sí?
Speaking in Spanish. En Brasil, por varias, primero porque es necesario, o sea, cuando uno de los problemas principales es cómo evalúas, o sea, cómo mides, cómo puedes acompañar los efectos de la lectura en las comunidades. Y por fuerza también de nuestros apoyadores, nuestros sponsors, que te piden siempre que pruebes alguna cosa, se hizo un movimiento que son, digamos, que las principales instituciones, pero todas, desde las financiadoras hasta las bibliotecas comunitarias, pasando por mi institución, que es el Instituto Emilia. Es un grupo de instituciones, de fundaciones, de asociaciones que trabajan en torno de la lectura. Es algo absolutamente ligado a la sociedad civil, que se creó una base propia de evaluación. Beo puede hablar un poquito más ahora, pero esa asociación que se llama Aggravated es una red de un conjunto. Se creó una evaluación, una base que, dependiendo de las instituciones y de los proyectos, se puede aplicar a cada proyecto. Beo, sé che complementar?
Non è questo. E un'altra cosa importante, ci stanno delle pubblicazioni, ma purtroppo tutto in portoghese, c'è un studio di 10 anni delle reti nazionali delle biblioteche, valutando tanto chi ha letto, i lettori, che chiamavano di interagente, ma pure la formazione dei mediatori delle letture, perché anche queste persone sono importanti, si stanno formando. È una pubblicazione molto preziosa. Con i bambini, lì nel quartiere dove lavoro, noi abbiamo deciso di fare un accompagnamento longitudinale. Accompagneremo questi nini che sono nati sino a entrare alla scuola. E abbiamo creato una forma di registro quotidiano. Si registrano dei dati che noi chiamiamo dati freddi e dati caldi. Dati freddi sono quanti libri ha in quella casa dopo il primo libro che abbiamo regalato, per esempio. I dati caldi sono i registri quando la madre ti dice: guarda, adesso la mia vicina pure lei legge al suo figlio. E si fa dei registri delle fotografie e delle storie. Então c'è una preoccupazione molto grande in registrare, perché pure noi vogliamo imparare con quello che stiamo facendo.
Sí, we have only... Hasta las 12:30. Okay. Sigamos. Back there, please.
Yes, thank you very much. And I wanted to ask about the mediators. So in last intervention, we mentioned the importance of books, of bringing books, but the problem is the access to reading. And in order to do that, we need also people carrying these books and working, as just mentioned. So what do you feel going into practice? What do you feel like the features or the skills of these mediators working with children and books need to be? Or you just said you're working on it, so I'm very curious about that. Thank you.
In our project, having workshops with mediators like librarians, tutors, teachers, even mothers. I mentioned that even illiterate mothers, semi-illiterate mothers, is very important in our project. We have different workshops, like what is children's literature, what is a children's book, and very simple in different stages. They go through the workshops, they learn everything about children's literature, about reading aloud techniques, about artistic activities. Because, as I mentioned, it is not only in our project, it is accessing to quality books is very important, but it is most important to share these books. How to share these books is very important. also for mothers when they have infants, because many mothers, for example, when we had some workshops with our Afghan mothers, and they told in our workshops, please speak with your child, with babies. They said, no, they don't understand me, what I am saying, and even I don't speak with older children. And it took time and takes time to just convince these mothers to speak with their children and to hug them and to read books and to share their stories, their rhymes, and so on. And also, we want to change the situation of our schools, because in our schools, it is not normal to read storybooks in classes, and they haven't good libraries in the schools. And then we should have workshops with teachers to know literature. What is literature? What is quality books? When you go to a bookshop, you cannot buy every book. You should recognize the quality, the literature, the artistic illustrations, and so on. Then we have different workshops for mediators for different purposes, you know.
Bueno, en Brasil es lo mismo, o sea, uno de los grandes desafíos que tenemos es formar a los formadores de lectura, porque solo muy recientemente nuestros profesores tienen una referencia lectora. Es una cosa muy reciente. Entonces, uno de los problemas principales es formar a los lectores. El instituto que yo participo, que es el Instituto Emilia, que tiene ya 12 años, se ocupa exactamente de eso. O sea, tenemos una revista, tenemos un magazine totalmente gratuito, que es para formar a los profesores, formar a los mediadores, formar a los promoters, reading promoters. Y entonces también se hacen cursos, se hacen seminarios, se promueven varias cosas. Tenemos también Laboratorio Emilia, que es nuestra sesión Brasil-España, que desarrolla también cursos online por todo el mundo, América Latina y un poquito de Europa, y también esa es la gran cuestión, o sea, el gran desafío. Tenemos libros, tenemos todo, pero hay que saber cómo trabajas con esos libros. En Brasil hay una historia que el gobierno compra muchos libros y los envía a las escuelas. Durante mucho tiempo, incluso hasta ahora, muchos profesores cierran los libros en los armarios para que no se estropeen. O sea, para que no se estropeen, para que los niños no los estropeen, y por qué se tienen que guardar. Para vosotros también lo mismo. O sea, ¿y cómo se hace? Cuando los libros se tienen que estropear, o sea, los libros tienen que ser usados. Pero eso es algo que hasta ahora se mantiene así.
Yes. So in Rwanda, we don't have many access points for people to have access to books and reading. But there are many efforts I've been doing with partners, and even I'm continuing to advocate with organizations I work with. For example, one of the ways we found that was quite innovative and works for our communities is to use the principles of social entrepreneurship in community libraries to to build them not only as learning hubs for the community, but also as spaces where like parents, families, mothers, they can come with their children, not only to read and learn, but also to empower themselves and do something that is going to empower them more economically and socially, somewhere where they can meet other peers and exchange on topics that matter for them. So access is still a huge challenge for reading programs in our region, but that is one of the ways we are trying to tackle and see how, if it is going to produce good results in the future, but so far it seems promising to take that kind of route, mixing the needs of culture, education, but also livelihood development using social entrepreneurship.
Bueno, yo creo que la formación de mediadores... ¿Lo apagué? ¿Aló? ¿Ahora? Sí. En nuestros proyectos, la formación de mediadores es una línea fundamental. Es decir, nosotros tenemos 3 líneas de acción generalmente en los proyectos. Uno, las acciones directas con los libros que hemos seleccionado. Luego, la formación de mediadores, como decían, o sea, madres, docentes, líderes comunitarios, porque son los únicos que pueden además apropiarse de ese proyecto y continuarlo, y la formación es fundamental. Y la creación de entornos lectores con las colecciones que nosotros seleccionamos y dejamos en las comunidades. Entonces yo sí creo que las 3 líneas de acción son fundamentales, pero obviamente la formación de mediadora es la que garantiza la continuidad de las acciones. En el Banco del Libro decimos que somos una organización de experimentación y ensayo. Y sí, somos experimentación de ensayo, es proyectos pilotos, pero las comunidades son las que pueden continuar esos proyectos.
Well, another project in Mexico, a Mexican government bought at one time libraries for every school, but they were locked up. The teachers would lock them. And they had a wonderful program, which sadly has ended, in which they, in Mexico City, which as you know is one of the world's biggest cities, in very poor schools, they got volunteers, adults, retired people, students, people who were readers, who etc., who would go into the schools every week and read to the classes from the books that had been sent to the school. And what happened, what was amazing, first place, the reading scores in those schools, the tests, annual tests went way up. But secondly, the teachers who had never been themselves maybe readers set up their own book clubs for adults, as adults, where they would start to read together and share their reading experiences. It was an extremely transformative project, which tragically, with the change of government in Mexico, came to an end, because it was really an effective way of getting teachers involved in the idea that it's okay to read books for pleasure, to read to kids. Kids loved it, but also, as I say, it changed the teachers' attitude towards reading for themselves. So it was a very good and successful project. Hmm? It ended about 4 years ago, I think. It was Los libros, the buying of the books for the libraries was the Libros del Rincón, and they were selected by very highly, not by teachers and community workers and librarians, high quality, and IBI Mexico was very involved. But the reading program in the schools, I'm just trying to remember what it was called. Sí. It would be in IBI Mexico's historic record of doing this. So the IBI Mexico.
Sala. No. Pero ella hablaba del socorro en sala de lectura. Vale.
Sí. I can't. I'm sorry. I can't. I'll try and find out. Hopefully. Hopefully. Yes, sorry.
Something that after COVID, because our trainers went to the regions to have workshops, 3 days workshops in the regions, but after COVID, we couldn't go, and we organized some virtual workshops for teachers or old people. But in remote areas, they had the teachers, the tutors, the librarians had no internet. They have no access to internet. Then during these years, we tried to empower local promoters. It is very important for us that just with some workshops, virtual workshops, and sending quality books to every volunteer who want to do something for children in remote areas, and everybody want to carry book bags to remote areas. We send books and we train them. It is very important to expand the network of promoters. And in this way, we were very successful during these years.
I have a
just one comment. I mean, really interesting to hear about all these reading programs and the scale. But I think sometimes reading initiatives can have unexpected consequences, and I think that every person's experience of reading is individual. And we know in what we do that you don't win everybody's hearts and minds, but you can make a big difference to individuals. And sometimes the children can be the instigators. So we have a project in northern Kenya, in Lagam. It's a very remote village up in the mountains, and we had a school library project. So some books we donated, some locally published books, teachers setting up reading programs. And one of these girls, who was about 7, she took her reading book home, and her grandmother, who was 60, her name was Florence, she was illiterate. She'd never been to school, she'd never learned reading, but she knew the government of Kenya was committed to education for everybody, regardless of age. So she went to the village elder, she insisted on a program of adult literacy, and a group of about 6 or 7 of the women in the village went through a literacy program and became literate. And that all happened because of one little girl who took her reading book home. So the children can also be the agents of change. It's not always about we adults, what we give to the children. It's also what the children give back to us. And also that really important law of unexpected consequences. So you have to scatter your seeds very wide and be very, persevere, because wonderful things can happen.
I have a question to Alison. I'd like to know in which regions do you work, if it's only in Europe and Africa, and also talking about trends, world trends, if we are expecting growth in these migration waves, not only because of war, but also because of climate change and everything else, how are you preparing yourselves to take books to these groups that are moving, that are never in the same country, or are in temporary jobs or in temporary camps? How do you see the future in this sense?
Thank you very much. Well, as I said at the beginning, our work is changing. It's still primarily in Africa, so we're working in over 20 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, mainly where English is either a medium of instruction or an official language, because all of the books we donate are in English. The books we buy locally are in local languages, but the gift that we have is the gift of books in English. But we are moving outside Africa and responding particularly to refugee crises in the Middle East. So in Jordan, in Lebanon, we've been supporting Syrian displaced children and working with an organization within Syria itself. And we're also looking at what we can do in Ukraine or in the in the exodus from Ukraine. And we're working with a group of Polish publishers who have got a really interesting initiative to source books from Ukrainian publishers at very low cost so that publishers themselves remain supported, and to distribute those through their marketing networks in Poland. And the distribution is so important, being able to get the books to where they're needed. So working through their distribution networks, using their representatives to get the books around the country. And we're looking to work with that organization. So in response, for me, it's all about finding the right partners, finding people who really understand the situation on the ground. In Lebanon, we work with IBI Lebanon, some of the schools that Patsy's mentioned. We donated books through IBI to those schools because we knew that IBI knew what was happening and how best to support. So we would never try and do this work directly ourselves. It's always with local partners. And I think our work over time will become increasingly about supporting these populations, but only where our books are wanted and relevant and can make a difference. We're not interested in charity donations. It's about carefully selected books for the people we want to help. Thank you for your question.
IBI is also supporting the Polish project with the Polish publishers buying books from Ukraine.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yes, we've just announced that at our press conference, actually. And
Okay,
but of course, there are also Ukrainian refugees in a number of other countries, and we're waiting to hear what our sections are going to do about that situation, and that will evolve. But as you say, our local sections are the ones that know how they can operate and what they can do to support this unexpected and I think for Europeans it's just so hard to believe that this could happen here, whereas for those of us from other parts of the world, it's more common. Any other questions or comments? Or you've been a fantastic audience. Thank you. Thank you. Yes?
It's not a real question, but first of all, thanks so much to everybody of you for the impressive tales of your history. And really, sometimes we... Posso parlare italiano?
Sì, sì, sì.
Grazie, volevo ringraziare. Muchas gracias a todos. I'm here not only because I'm a librarian and I work in Italy, and sometimes we complain, a volte ci lamentiamo in Italia per le difficili situazioni in cui come bibliotecari ci troviamo. Sometimes we feel our government don't understand that books are not enough. We need people, we need mediators. And you said it so well and so strongly, and starting from situations that have nothing to do with ours, and that it was very impressive for me to listen to. But I'm here also because I'm from IFLA, from International Federation of Library Associations, and so I have just a very tiny question for each of you. Somebody already answered. I would like so much to have your email, please, because I work in the Standing Committee Libraries for Children and Young Adults, and we really need and miss contacts from so many parts of the world, and I'm very glad I met you, and so I would like to stay in touch with each of you for some supplementary questions that there is no time here to put to you. Thank you. So I will give you a small quaderno copybook, so I ask to you to write to me your email address if you don't mind, and if I can write to you later on to ask you something else. Thank you. Grazie. Gracias. Muchas gracias.
IBI and IFLA also have a very tight, we have a memorandum of understanding. We work with IFLA. Yep. No, we should have more.
Nosotros hicimos con IFLA un encuentro de biblioterapia en el Banco del Libro después del proyecto Leer para Vivir. Te voy a...